The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question for the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is back in session. It is November 9th, 2025, and we are going to look at the situation within Ukraine. So, let's start. First of all, we are going to talk about a rapidly developing situation. And that is, of course, the GULAYIPOLE front, or GULAYIPOLE, as I incorrectly pronounced in many videos I made in the past. But after going through it, it seems to me that it is GULAYIPOLE and not GULAYIPOLE, like Melitopol, Mariupol, Nikopol, you name it. So it is GULAYIPOLE. But anyway, I digress. Let's get away from the pronunciation issues that I still have to this day with Slavic towns, villages, etc., and talk about the situation on this front. So, the armed forces of Ukraine are slowly collapsing here, if not rapidly, that is, because the Russians, after taking full control over the village of Uspinovka, are now advancing southeastwards towards the town of GULAYIPOLE. As we are looking at the situation right now on the map, as you can see, we have around 3 to 4 villages that are currently contested. This includes the villages Ravnopilia, Nove, Novoi, Spinichvisky, and Solodike. So we have around 3 to 4 villages that the Russians are trying to capture. And if the Russians are able to capture all these areas here, they will be within striking distance of the town of GULAYIPOLE, which was the birthplace of infamous Ukrainian anarchist Nestor Makhno. The last time I made a video, the Ukrainians were holding on to the front here, or at least to the defensive positions that they established in outside of the village of Novomi Khalivka, but it appears that has collapsed, and the Russians have allegedly established control over Nove and Spinivsky. Now, again, I apologize if I am butchering the pronunciation of the name of these villages, but it is what it is. The Russians are also continuing to advance north too. They have apparently seized additional farming areas here north of Oleksivka, and are apparently right now contesting for the village of Oristopol, which is outside of the strategic village of Veliki Komikhalivka. The Russians also are still contesting for Danilovka, but there are no reports from there. And yeah, the armed forces of Ukraine are getting, as far as I know, completely routed in this area. It's going to be interesting to see how this develops over the coming 2 to 3 weeks. But if I have to guess what will happen by then, it's that the armed forces of Ukraine, not Ukraine. Again, I don't know what's with me in my pronunciations today. It's been poor as hell. But again, the armed forces of Ukraine are losing very badly in this area, and it seems to me that it's only a matter of time before they are caught up in another cauldron. This time, of course, being in GULAYIPOLE. If they lose GULAYIPOLE, then the Russians will have no issues being able to attack the rest of this bulge here in southern Dnipropetrovsk region. And as I mentioned in my last video, there were reports, arguably absurd reports that is, that the Russians got as far as Pokrovsky itself. But time will tell if those reports are true. In the main Dnipropetrovsk direction, which is headed towards Novopavlovka, the armed forces of Ukraine have allegedly have retaken these hills that overlook Ivanovka and are trying to retake the village of Ivanovka itself. But as of right now, there are no confirmations of Ukrainian advances at this time. And as far as I know, Ukrainian counteroffensive has failed, but time will tell. Novopavlovka is still contested too. And going into the most important area right now, which is the Pokrovsk slash Mayanograd direction, or Krasnaya Amisk direction, that is, the Russians have apparently taken partial or full control over the city of Pokrovsk itself from the armed forces of Ukraine, though we don't have a complete capture yet confirmed by the Russians themselves. Though it is now all but certain that the main part of the city is under Russian control, with the last series of residential areas being seized by the Russian army. And the only thing that remains for the Ukrainians are these datas here that are just outside of the city of Pokrovsk itself. It is considered as a part of the city, and because of that, Suryak still has this area like in an orange dot, which means that the area is contested. There's even reports, too, that the armed forces of Ukraine are no longer in the village of Lisovka, but time will tell if that's true, but to be quite honest, I think it is. And Russians have also apparently captured these series of fortifications here, which were outside of Pokrovsk and Lisovka. The Russians are also continuing to advance outside of the, or not outside, but inside now, the city of Mayanograd, and are also progressing within Ravine as well. The Dobropila direction looks like it's pretty much finished. The armed forces of Ukraine have retaken the majority of what they lost back in August 2025. And going to the Konstantinovka direction, there is a bit of confusion. Apparently, other than the Russians making progress within the village of Ivano-Pilia, the Russians have also dealt with a possible Ukrainian counteroffensive within the town of Chasiv Yar. Now, I'll be honest here, I honestly don't know if this is going to result in anything too major, because Chasiv Yar's most important parts, which is the Kami block here, which is, like, I think on the highest part, like, hill-wise of the whole town that is under Russian control. So, there is a possibility that Ukrainians might get pushed back here, or this area, like as you see in the southern part of Chasiv Yar here, becomes a gray zone, which of course will lead to a lot of confusion over who controls what. But if there is one thing that those recent geolocations showed, it's that the Russians do in fact have over 90+% control over Chasiv Yar, and that the deep state map is absurdly outdated by 3 months. In the Siversk direction, the Russians have reportedly continued advancing outside of Siversk itself, though it seems right now the armed forces of Ukraine were able to repel the attacks. But the last time I checked, it seems that Siversk is still contested. So the armed forces of Ukraine do not have complete control over the area, though they do control a majority of the town. Liman is the same, so we're going to skip over that. Same with the Alexandrovka direction. And then going to the city of Kupiansk, it appears that the Russians have seized majority control, or at least half control, over the eastern part of the city, and have continued advancing down south based on the recent geolocations that were provided. But otherwise, we have no further updates from that direction. And lastly, in the town of Volchansk, it seems that the Russians are now looking to wrap up the Battle of Volchansk after a whole year of fighting. They have taken this area here that is just across the Volcha River, and have also taken this school here, which is also located on the final, like, 25 to 30% of Volchansk that the armed forces of Ukraine still hold. There's also some fighting here outside of the village of Prilipka. Sorry if I butchered the pronunciation again, but it is what it is. And that will do it for today's video. So I hope all of you found what I made today to be informative, interesting, entertaining. It doesn't really matter. As long as you were informed by what's going on the front line in Ukraine, that's all I could ask for. So I'll see you guys in the next 3 days, and I'll catch you all later. Peace out, and have a good day. Bye-bye.